Three.
Danielle, you're going in now.
Okay. Hello?
Danielle, I can hear you, but I don't see you. Now I see you, and I get a great echo.
Here we go.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you so much for putting your name in the hat to be on our memorial committee to mark the 20th anniversary of September 11th. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your passion for this special event?
Sure. So I'm actually not a native Pennsylvania girl. I was born and raised in New Jersey. For me, going into New York City almost every weekend was part of my growing up. Going into school and attending college in New York City, I used to see the trade centers every morning. And when I moved here 21 years ago, I just couldn't fathom what was happening in our world. And still 20 years ago, you know, even though the events happened 20 years ago, I remember every detail of where I was and the people that I talked to and knew that were grieving and, you know, had lost people at the trade centers. So I think it's a really important thing to acknowledge. And certainly 20 years is, you know, it seems like yesterday for me. So I can only imagine what, you know, Ellen and Judy feel. And I just would love to be a part of the committee that, you know, brings it to the township and, you know, assumably the state of Pennsylvania, knowing that we have the Garden of Reflection, and that's the state, what do you call it? The memorial. So.
Yeah, you know, it's a day that, you know, it's hard to talk about, but I thank you for putting your name in the hat, and I can sure. Hear the compassion in your voice. I can hear the Jersey in your accent. I'm from Queens, so you know, I too have lived here for quite some time, but the accent remains strong.
That it does.
Does any of the other supervisors have any questions that they'd like to ask Danielle? Go ahead, James.
Hi, Danielle.
Hello, how are you?
So good. No questions for you. I just want to thank you for volunteering and coming forward and wanting to be a part of this. I really do appreciate that.
Sure. Thank you.
John or Fred?
Yeah, Danielle, I think we met your daughter's Silver Award Girl Scout. So did she do the work for the 9/11 Memorial for her Silver Award?
She did.
Okay.
So my daughter, Elena, is a Girl Scout, and she did her Silver Award. She created the pamphlet, a children's guide, to discovering Garden of Reflection, and she held tours at the Garden of Reflection for township children, and that was about 4 years ago.
Oh my God, it's been that long?
It's been that long. She's working on her Gold Award now, so yeah.
That's all I had. I didn't have any particular questions. Thank you so much for being willing to volunteer.
Sure. And you were very supportive during her project, so I appreciate that. I remember you came to her pinning ceremony.
Okay, Fred, you're okay?
I'm okay. I just appreciate that you're stepping up. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Monica, can you bring in Ellen? I believe she's the next on the interview list.
Yes, we'll bring her in now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ellen's in the room.
I believe you, but I cannot see her. So, Ellen, can you hear us? There she is.
There we are.
All right. Hi, Ellen. Nice to see you this evening. Ellen, as you know, we're holding these interviews. We had our first a few seconds ago, and now you are the next person who we're going to speak to. I feel awkward. We usually ask people to tell us why they're interested in this volunteer opportunity, but I sense I might know that answer. So why don't you share with us what you'd like to share about your work on 9/11 Memorial? And with my words so sweet, she disappears. Did we lose Ellen?
We lost Ellen.
It looks like she dropped out. You want us to bring in Judy, or you want us to wait?
Let's bring in Judy and tell Ellen as soon as she comes back, we'll go back to Ellen. And this way we can keep moving along.
Sounds good.
Got Ellen.
We've got Ellen back.
Looks like she's back.
All right, well, let's, since we started with Judy, let's finish with Judy and please tell Ellen we'll be back with her. Technical difficulties. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
It is a pleasure to meet you. The township is all watching and they can't wait to meet you as well.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, and now we have Ellen and Judy at the same
That's
time.
good.
We're having some technical difficulties.
It's perfectly fine. Ellen and I talk all the time, and I could recommend Elena and Ellen as wonderful people to work with for the garden.
Well, you know what? Then if you guys don't mind sharing the screen. We had just started with Ellen when Ellen, I said
don't undo it
Ellen,
now. It's
and
working.
you hung up on me, Ellen. I don't know.
And I admit I have another meeting after this when I'm zoomed out. I've had it.
So, Ellen, we were just asking you to share with the members of the board whatever you want to share about your passion for this particular project.
Well, there's no one that doesn't know that no matter what it is with the Garden of Reflection, I am involved with it, and I have been. I can't believe I could say now for almost 20 years. That's absurd to me. This year is different. As you know, you formed a committee, so it's a township committee, and we'll try to adhere to what it is that you need. But it's never waned in our conviction of what we want. September 11th is a time not only for family members, but for a whole community to respond in any way, shape, or form that they need to be at some place on that day and to be at a ceremony or not. But the garden is there for them to do whatever it is that their needs require. For us, we will, as family members, be able to represent both of the different family members' needs. There are some family members that need a morning ceremony. There are others that need the night ceremony. There are two completely different meanings to each one of them. So like Judy said, we have spoken directly about this, and we're good to go in doing what we've done, for years. I mean, Judy's been doing a ceremony in the morning for years, and I haven't been doing the night ceremony for the last very few years, but we'll just do it again. This is the 20th anniversary. The expectation is different for some family members, what this year will represent, but also I think to our community, and the fact that it's on a weekend is going to change some of the dynamics. But, I can get my committee together and be ready for that.
Okay. Judy, you want to say a few words?
Yes, I will be brief. Like Ellen said, everyone's needs, and I know from my own children, each one of them have different needs. To be honest, one of them was, under the circumstances last year, of course, was very small and quiet. And one of my sons said, Mom, it was really nice that we could all be together in sort of private. And I realized at that point, each one of my children's needs are different, just like everyone else's needs in the community are different. And I think this is something we have to really be understanding, not just people that live in Lower Makefield, but there are other Bucks County residents that at one time lived in Lower Makefield, some never did. And this is very special to them. For, I would say, most of the families, this is the only place they have to go. And it's the meaning is there. And I think, first, I will say that Elena did an outstanding job. I also was at her pinning ceremony, and I went the first night she did tours. I mean, as a former Girl Scout, I was really proud of her. And I think that if we get a good committee, I think we can have it is a weekend. Like Ellen said, there's Friday evening that people might want to be at the garden. There'll be Saturday night. And I think we're going to have a lot of people even on the 12th on Sunday, because it is a weekend and hopefully no COVID and hopefully very good weather. So this is very meaningful to me. For me, not just with Ellen, but in my heart, I carry Grace Gottschalk with me. We were friends before this happened. Grace and I were friends for almost 40 years, and we both lost sons, and we bonded together. And I want this to be something that I feel Grace will look down from where she is and be proud of all of us for making sure that her son Bill is remembered, just like Vic and Josh and the other family members. I just think this will be a good committee. I really do.
Thank you both. Supervisors, does anybody have anything that they would like to ask or say?
We know you both, and we know where your heart is, and I don't think there's going to be much deliberation on what we're going to do.
Okay.
Always appreciate to see both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. And thank you for living through our technical difficulties. So.
Thanks, Judy. Thanks.
I'm gonna hop out of your meeting because I have another meeting, unfortunately, to Zoom to.
Good night, Judy.
Good night. Sleep
Night.
well. Everyone stay well. Bye-bye.
Yep. And good night, Ellen. In case you don't know, you'll be working, James is the liaison, so you'll get to work with James and,
Great.
once the vote happens. So.
Yes, that's
Forward
right.
to it, Ellen.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, good. Thank you. All right.
night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Seeing you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
See that?
Right.
We're late. We get done early. See?
Yep.
Fantastic, Madam Chair.
So we have a few minutes before the meeting starts. So do we have a way to handle that since we are in the public room at this moment in time? Do we just...
Yes, we can go back out to the logo and
Hello and welcome to the Lower Makefield Township Board of Supervisor meeting, February 3rd, 2021. Today, in order to make public comment, you can dial in using the phone number 646-558-8656 and enter meeting ID 833-6527-7553, followed by the hash or pound sign. Please remember that if you're following along on social media and you have a question about a potential agenda item, you will be a 10-second delay in the so to call early. And now I'll pass the meeting to Chair Suzanne Blundy.
Good evening. Please join me I call this meeting to order, and I would ask that you join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Supervisor Lewis, are you here?
Yes.
Supervisor McCartney.
I'm present.
Supervisor Weiss.
I'm here too.
As am I. Supervisor Grenier will be joining us as soon as he can. And so with that, we call the meeting to order. Kurt, is there any COVID-19 update?
Do not have an update for tonight. If there's a question, I'm happy to take it.
John, did you have a question?
I do have a quick announcement, a community announcement, if that's okay at this time.
I think, sure, you can go first, and then Monica, you'll give your updates. Go ahead, John.
Yep. So I have exciting news for the community. We actually have one of the very first female Eagle Scouts in the nation is a Lower Makefield resident, Sarah Hogan. Just recently passed through, and she will be part of the inaugural members of the first female Eagle Scouts in the nation. I believe she's the only one in Bucks County, which is a huge achievement for the community. Sarah is impressive. She earned 42 merit badges. She's a member of the Order of the Arrow. She's a patrol leader for the Valkyries and is currently an instructor. So amazing. Her service project was building potting benches from repurposed materials at the Tyler State Park. So it's beyond exciting for the community that we have one of the very first in Lower Makefield, and this is a distinction for the community. I think all of us are very, very proud of the Scouts, both the Boys and Girl Scouts, but to have one of the very first female Eagle Scouts joining the just tremendous numbers of Eagle Scouts that we generate in Lower Makefield is a super exciting thing. And when we think about, COVID-19 is not a fun thing to talk about on a regular basis. It's so exciting to have great news happening in the community. And I know all the supervisors are looking forward to her ceremony and being there when that is scheduled, which I am hoping is soon, because we always enjoyed those. So that was my announcement. I'm just thrilled and excited. I know everyone else is as well. So congratulations to Sarah. And also, I think everybody in the community should be really excited about this.
Congratulations, Sarah. And that's S-A-R-A-H Hogan for the minutes. So good news. Monica, do you want to continue with your announcements?
Sure. We continue to offer digital recreation opportunities. Please see the LMT webpage. The link is on the agenda or at the Park and Rec section of the website. Pool registration is open. We're doing very well. To add to that, we have the community pool information meeting. We're getting a lot of questions about COVID protocols. We'll be reviewing the potential COVID protocols and what steps and what to expect along the way during that meeting. And residents will have an opportunity to ask questions during a public comment section. So please log into that. The Zoom information is on our social media right now. And one thing that I didn't include on the as an announcement, but I'd like to add is we do have a few positions open right now in the Parks and Rec Department. And if you are interested and qualified, please check out our website and take a look. And I also believe there's another job opportunity in planning and zoning right now. And I will just continue on here. There is a reminder that residents and youth organizations may call in to make special announcements at this time. And I can tell you, Suzanne, there is no one on the line right now.
Great. Well, not great, but great. Thank you for that. Any other comments or announcements from other supervisors? Yes, Kurt.
Sorry, clearly I'm not a supervisor. I do want to bring up something from the last meeting that I think is important. We had a caller that had asked about our warrant list and that being available before the meeting to be viewed. I had incorrectly stated and thought at the time that that was put on the website as part of our agenda. It has not been. So starting with the next meeting, where we will be having an item, obviously, to pay our bills at the next meeting, the list itself will be attached to the agenda and placed online as part of the agenda. Once the minutes are approved, that same warrant list then will be attached to the back of the minutes as well. So people can see it in the front before the meeting, and then it'll be part of the record, which will match up with the motion that's made by the treasurer at that meeting. So I appreciate their call for that. We created that to be transparent, and that was an oversight, and that'll be corrected beginning with the next meeting.
Great. Thank you. Hearing no other comments, we're going to scoot along to agenda item number 6. Is there a motion for approval of the January 2021 minutes?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, James, and the second, Fred. Are there any discussion? Any public comment, Monica?
No public comment.
And with that, I call the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Agenda item number 7. We're going to hear from Mike Atera about our golf course.
We're bringing Mike in now.
Perfect.
Mike is in.
Hey, Mike.
So Suzanne, I had asked for Mike to participate in the meeting. Mike and I have been having some discussions early in the year regarding some thoughts that he had that he had taken to the golf committee first for discussion before we came to the board. So in your packet, I did include both in my manager's report, sort of a financial assessment of what he's going to outline, and then Mike's report as well that was available to you. So Mike, feel free to take it away. I guess if the board has questions or the chair wants to ask to read it directly, she will. Thank you.
You have to unmute yourself to begin.
Thank you, Kurt. I have a PowerPoint presentation I put together. I don't know if we can pull that up now, and I can just kind of walk you through. So I took the information that I sent you that was in your packet, as Kurt has mentioned, and we just added a few slides, I think, just to help give the public some understanding of some of the things we're discussing. So if I could go to the next slide. So I figured it makes sense to start with our mission statement, and I know you've got a busy schedule, so I won't drag it out, but just the first sentence, I think, is the key, that our mission is to redefine public golf and setting standards, which is something we have tried to do for the past 10 years, and I think we've done pretty successfully throughout those years, and just really important that we keep the golf course in great condition and with the support of the board, and it's been going very well that way with our capital improvements over the years. So That being said, if we can move to the next slide. Just a little bit, just why the golf course is so special. I think it's really important to kind of understand who we are. Great design is really where it all starts. A lot of foresight on the property and the design from Rick Jacobson. Two things really stand out in the design. The bunkering is spectacular, and the vistas are amazing out there. So it's a very beautiful golf course to play. But also the yardage really plays into that, being 5,000 to 7,000 yards gives a lot of options for every skill level. So it's been a fan favorite for a lot of years for a lot of people from all different levels of play. So that's really important. And we saw that in Pennsylvania Golf Course Owners, making us the Club of the Year in 2016. It's rated number 9 in Pennsylvania public golf courses, places you can play. Our driving range has been just well received over the years. A very busy, popular place. And that's one of the agenda items we're going to talk about today. But nationally, has been recognized every year since 2013. Two-time host for U.S. Open qualifiers, which says a lot about the golf course again, and operationally what we do to get the second one. And doing things for junior golf is also important, and hosting the junior am qualifier was a big one. Best of Bucks 8 years in a row, which is great, and just our opportunity to support our local community with fundraisers. So if we can go to the next slide. Just some of the outreach that we do, throughout the year, LMT senior clinics, spring and fall, lots of PGA junior leagues going on. We've got 2 teams now. Things like Mid-Atlantic Blind Golfer Day, which is pretty special to be able to host them. And then just fun stuff for the community, fun days and nine and dines and things that are exciting to, let people get out and do every day. Next slide, please. And then just some of the other values I think the golf course brings, and I did want to, take a minute because I think we miss sometimes, the golf course is an Audubon certified golf course, which was not an easy get. Took many years. We had several of our golf committee and our superintendent work real hard to get that certification. So it's nice to be able to note that to the community. Obviously, resident pricing is really important to offer discounting pricing to the community, and then just that health and fitness and recreation to every different different group out there that we can, whether it's juniors or seniors, special needs, women's and military, and then lastly, employment. We obviously employ a lot of local residents, which is a great opportunity to be able to do. So kind of with all that said, if we can go to the next slide, just kind of getting back to why we're here. The two pieces that we wanted to talk about today were capital purchases and really just some revisions to the capital purchase and some innovation opportunities we have that, can be revenue generators and some labor savings for us. But the first piece really kind of came about. We've been putting together a long-term capital equipment replacement plan over the years. Obviously, the last couple of years, we've kind of done whatever we could to hold back and to save some dollars. Last year, we did some updates to the fairway units, which were kind of on the schedule, which we held off on, and that tended to work out okay. The improvements we made to those were much less than trying to buy the new ones. So it bought us a couple more years with those mowers and saved quite a bit of money. We were hoping to do the same with the triplexes this year. But really, as we got into it, the mechanic got through the equipment this winter, and we just think it really would make a lot of sense to kind of reallocate our capital dollars. The other money that we've been spending for capital the last few years has been to continue that bunker renovation, which I think is very important, and it means a lot to the golf course, the integrity of the property. But we've been doing that for about 35,000 a year. And then having 60,000 in the budget this year, we just thought it would really behoove us to reallocate for those green mowers. Obviously reduce some maintenance and some cost. And, we're more about the risk and the quality. We don't want to have any chance of breakdowns and not having the greens mowed, and just the improvement that makes to mowing the greens. Can move forward. Then the other two items, we had Top Tracer, and then the other one I'll talk about in a minute is Fairway IQ. But the Top Tracer opportunity kind of came to us, and we were talking through it. And at first, the numbers were pretty high, and we kind of worked through those with the vendor, and also with a partnership with Golf Now, could also have an opportunity to trade out some of those dollars if we so choose. And as I was talking with Kurt, we made some changes operationally. We reduced some labor by about $50,000. And we just thought, it would be smart to use that money in a way that could generate new dollars and create some excitement at the golf course and on the range. And again, just more innovation all around to be a little more exciting out there. So pretty simply, it's about a $32,000 cost to implement. We could see, right off the bat, about a $55,000 increase of just from fees that we would be charging for the new technology that people would pay. Some of the case studies are showing that we should be looking at about 30%, and in our case would be about $100,000. But we'll err on the side of caution on that. But I think there's some room to grow this as well.
Mike, could you just in one line say what it actually is?
Yeah. So if you want to flip the next, I can show you and say a little bit at the same time. So this technology, if you may have heard of Top Golf facilities, these driving ranges that are kind of driven by video screens, almost like a video game kind of concept, where you can actually on the monitor play a host of different games. This is kind of one of them. If you jump to the next screen, it'll show you some of the games that are out there. So virtual golf, warm-up practice sessions, closest to the pins and long drive, some fun games for kids like Go Fish, where they're actually hitting balls in the water and it get points for hitting different, catching different fish. So a whole bunch of different games that can be played. And, obviously this is, millennials love it. Adults love the practice. The instructors love it because they can use it with their students, and club fitting has a lot of value all the way across the board. And it's kind of what's out there right now, what's exciting in golf. We're seeing a lot of growth in this age group with a lot of millennials. So this would then create that opportunity maybe to attract more. You can jump to the next one. And it also has very similar to what you'd see indoors, where you'd be playing a Pebble Beach, or, they can actually rent the space. We have three covered stalls, and this unit can be placed under the stalls, and they can rent the space and actually, be playing different golf courses and our own golf course from the driving range. So, okay, jump to the next one. And then the second piece of it is a mobile app piece that we would do for the rest of the driving range. So we would use the stationary piece that you just saw, which would be a screen under our cover, and then use a mobile piece for the rest of the stalls. And a lot of games on this as well, but also for practice sessions. Folks that go out there really want to know their distances and their clubs and their really the ball flight and what's going on. These are great add-on for them to use. So whether you can rent the stall, if you're on any of our mats or on the turf, the mobile unit also works. So they have that option to use that as well. We'll jump to the next slide. So that was the top tracer. So like I said, that piece there provides an opportunity for us to really enhance the driving range and some of the offerings we have with the driving range, and as well, be an opportunity to generate some new revenues. On the other side was our Fairway IQ. I've been talking with the owner for quite some time and been looking at his product. I've been interested in his product for some time, and he have just recently added some things that I thought were excellent. Mostly the communication piece and the option to allow some access for us to control carts and kind of where people are. So the Fairway IQ does a couple things. It is basically a GPS unit that's placed in the golf cart. We don't really need screens anymore for the golfer to see where they are, yardage-wise and those things. Most golfers now have cell phones and an app, or have a watch or a laser that they use. So the cost to do that is quite high, and this really kind of gives you the benefit of what GPS does, which is pace of play and control. So it gives us the opportunity to really know where our golf carts are, to really manage pace of play. The trick with pace of play is kind of knowing where people are, and if there is a bottleneck, to catch it early, because if it continues and you have a slow group, then the rest of the golf course gets backed up. So the challenge is always to catch them early and to make adjustments quickly so that the golf course can run smoothly throughout the day. Done a lot of work in this field, and it's it is the most important thing of how we tee them off and start them, and then kind of manage early. So we do that now with marshals. So we have to have a lot of labor out there to do that, where we got eyes on the golfers versus some technology that would help us. One of the things we find is communication with the golfer. When the golf staff kind of has to get engaged with them, they tend to pay more attention than to just marshals. It's always hard for the marshal to, really move them along. We try to be in a way of good customer service, but at the same time, you got to be pretty strong to keep moving them along. So they just tend to do well with the golf pros talking to them. So this gives us those opportunities to kind of manage through that, and helps us control the golf carts, which was the other piece. And being able to control the golf carts when it's wet out is really important, so that we can keep them on a cart path on a certain hole, talk to them if they go off the cart path. So it has two-way communication for us to do that. If you want to jump through the next one. Just a couple of notes, which I thought were kind of interesting on takeaways from the USGA. It's really about flow and not time. Making sure every group just kind of keeps playing and there's not a lot of waiting is the key to good pace of play. And some golf courses play faster than others by design, but flow is the real key. So that's important. You do see some really different times coming in, early rounds playing as much as 2 hours faster, which is always the case. It's kind of like being on the highway. If it's not rush hour, you're zipping along, and at rush hour, it can get bottleneck up on you. So these things allow us to try to create that flow and not the bottlenecks. And then again, just trying to cut time out. Anytime you can cut time, people are happy, moving along. I kind of like this note from USGA about the short formats. 3 and 6 holes is something we've been doing for many, many years. So that's kind of cool that they're talking about that, and something that Makefield offers almost on a daily basis. Okay, so we can move along to the next slide. Just kind of some of the screens so you can get a kind of an idea. Gives us really exactly where people are, and gives us an idea of their pace. Red would be out of pace, green would be in pace. So we can kind of keep an eye on that. We get ping back at the shop if anybody's out of pace or going into a slow pace, so that we can make those communications. And go to the next one. So Fairway IQ, not a high cost to the product. First year is a little bit more because you're paying for some of the hardware install, $7,500, and then $3,250 annually after that. But pretty good return on investment. We're seeing about a $10,000 annual reduction in some of our labor with the marshaling. So it just makes us more efficient, gives us a chance to use our golf professionals to be that person that can communicate with the golfer, just create a better experience all around. And I think sell some more rounds at the same time. So all positive. So, kind of at the end, just trying to look at these things. You can go to the next slide. Really about reallocation of budget, and just thinking through how we could, continue to stay on top of the market is what this is all about, and give us some better tools to do that, and find new ways to generate income. So, anyone has any questions?
Monica, if you could, thanks.
Thanks.
Yes, Kurt.
So not to disagree with Mike's initial financial assessment, but I want to point out a couple of things. If the board was inclined, I'm going to start with the first part with the mowers. And Mike and I have talked about this. We have a network of banks that we send these specs out as we've done equipment financing over the last few years and get a very competitive rate. And, just the timing of that, as I pointed out in my report, would likely be 3 quarterly payments this year, which based upon the aggregate numbers Mike gave would have a cost that I would anticipate to be like $22,000 to $23,000 with 3 quarterly payments this year, which would still give us close in that number to $35,000 to $40,000 towards bunkers this year. Obviously, if for some reason it came in more, we'd adjust accordingly. But if the board was inclined, I would anticipate in one of the meetings in March bringing back a proposal and a recommendation to approve that financing with whomever that institution would be. The number in my report I gave you was 3.5%. Rates are lower than that currently, but I was trying to give you all a conservative number so you knew where we were at. So, that's for the board to decide, and that's all I have.
So, Kurt, in order to get the discussion started, would the appropriate motion be consideration of golf capital expenditure adjustments to allow for the lease of 2 new green mowers, or does it not need to be that specific?
It can be that specific because that's what it is. And I think the goal of bringing this here to you is that the numbers level out the same and we get it on the record that allocation was approved. So I think the way you just worded it, if you want to say that exactly the same way again, I don't know if you wrote that down.
I did.
I think is appropriate, and I'll defer to the solicitor. You guys can discuss the other items. The other items are essentially an offset from personnel savings that Mike has discussed with me that essentially offset as well, that could be framed, I think, in any way you want to.
I mean, it may not even be necessary to have a motion on that. You can. I mean, you're reallocating money within a budget item, so you're not increasing any expenditure. But if you want to make a record that you're approving the reallocation of the monies as described for the technology upgrades, you can do that. That's fine too.
So let's start with the first motion, if there's an interest in terms of the green mowers, which I cannot say again because it hurts my own ears. So is there a motion? Fred?
We can make the motion to reallocate the funds to purchase the 2 or lease the 2 green mowers.
Is there a second?
Presented.
Thank you, James. Any discussion?
Would the motion need to have the account numbers, or are we moving anything between accounts?
Oh, good question. I'm sorry, good question. That's all within the golf fund. There is an aggregate capital expenditure fund for golf that it's all within that fund. So you're not even moving funds around fund numbers. It's in that account, in that same budget line item.
Any other discussion? Monica, is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
And with that, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Then is there a second motion to consider the golf technology upgrades?
Just to clarify, this again is just a reallocation, right, Kurt? Okay.
Kurt says correct.
And actually, with what Mike presented, even if you generated no revenue from this, which we don't believe is the case, it actually is a marginal reduction from the staff savings that we had for the whole presentation Mike just made. It would actually be a few dollars less.
Okay. I'll make that motion then.
Thank you, James. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Fred. Any discussion amongst the board?
So, question for Mike. Have you used either of these technologies with Hopewell Valley, Five Ponds, or Clearbrook, or Spring Hollow, any of those that you can?
Not these particular ones. GPS, Pace of Play, yes. Other companies I've used, but again, they were more full screen golfer forward facing GPS units. Gave us this technology, but a much more expensive venture going in hundreds of thousands of dollar kind of concept.
And that was in the past. Did they pay out though?
No, they didn't. You know, I mean, it became kind of just an add-on and an expense, almost. You know, just something that you put into your cart lease. So it was really expensive. The payout and the only piece that we loved about the GPS was all the things this has, which is the back end, which is the management systems and the screen and knowing where the carts are so we can communicate to them and use the Pace of Play part. So.
And then on the top tracer technology.
Yeah.
How's that ball? Does anything happen to the ball when it's used at all? Or is it just any ball works?
Any ball, yeah, any range ball. So it's all there's cameras that are installed on the unit that we have at the range, and then they would put up a couple of antennas, and so they capture all the data right there. So it's pretty sharp stuff.
Mike, I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was going to say, and then obviously the pictures that are generated. Could we monetize the horrible slices from some of the golfers?
Our instructors definitely can. Yeah. Definitely help them.
Mike, if this technology is approved, when would you anticipate that it would be available?
If we get it approved tonight, they're talking in the April timeframe, 1st of May, the latest.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion from the board? No? Okay. Go ahead, John.
One last thing. I would like us to come back and review the return on investment on both technology expenditures so that at the end of the year, we know what the payout and return on investment is for this. That would be if I could have that added to the motion, if you will, so that the instruct the township manager to come back with us, 6-8 months from now to give us a sense of whether this hit the ROI targets, exceeded it, or didn't, would be my request related to this.
Welcome, Dan. So, John, when you ask for that, are you talking about as part of, let's say, the budget? When we talk about the budget for next year, that included in that would be some discussion about the ROI on these two initiatives?
Separate from that, I want to know that, and maybe if it's getting installed in April, we'll have a good sense by October whether it's working or not. or even 3 or 4 months in to know whether we're generating the revenue and whether the GPS stuff in terms of pace of play have improved. We want to know that. How quickly do we think we would know whether this is working or not in terms of value for us?
Go ahead, Kurt, please.
Oh, I would offer two things. John, yes, that absolutely can be done. And I can also talk with Mike and one of the finance staff if we want to, and I'll talk to Mike, I'm not trying to blindside him here. If we can have specific line items in the budget where that revenue is put specifically into those line items that you all can see that, not only in a separate report, John, or analysis, but as part of the budget process as far as what we're seeing specifically in that line item for return. If we can memorialize it that way, we'll do that as well.
And did the golf committee review this as well, or did they render an opinion on this?
Yeah, we went through it last couple of meetings, actually. So we've been talking about it with them for a few meetings, and the last two meetings, we presented it in obviously our last meeting.
But your hope in terms of the top tracer and the GPS element, you think you'll know in 3 months if this is working or not?
Yeah, I think as we get into summertime, we'll have a pretty good handle on how it is. I'm happy to come back late summer maybe and give you an update, and that would be great. And I think the pace of play, a lot of reporting that comes through that system. We won't see dollars, but obviously we'll see savings in labor. But we'll see for sure, what's going on the golf course.
And possibly, though, increased throughput, meaning more people on the course.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's where I'm curious to track this element of revenue from that, so that if this pays out, it's certainly something we want to do. I mean, we have been effective in maximizing, I would say, tee revenue and cart revenue relatively well, depending on weather is the killer for us. So,
right.
But that is, if we can improve on that even more, I would be even more excited when we want to track that.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, that would be great, Mike. If we'll put you on the calendar for July or August to give us an update. We'll track it against the installation. Part of it, obviously, as John just pointed out, will be revenue weather dependent, but let's hope for good weather and good news. Yeah. Dan, did you have anything you wanted to ask about the technology upgrades at the golf course?
Sorry about that. I was just curious in terms of funding, where the funding's coming from, if that's...
So we address that because it's actually already in the budget and because of savings that have been achieved by the golf course. That's it's actually net neutral.
So that's coming from staff. So in other words, that's going to be staff. We've re-examined staffing needs, both even including this technology, and we're estimating about a $50,000 staff savings, even if you didn't do this to start with. So the $50,000 in staff savings that we're talking about funds all of the technology upgrades. Then I think the hope is then we get revenue on the other side of this that we had not budgeted for, that boosts it more. And then we get some savings, like Mike had said before you got on here, with marshals and other staff time that we wouldn't need to use with this. So even if nothing came from it, no revenue, no improvements or anything, it's essentially been paid for by some staff adjustments that we've made to the budget item to start the year.
So, Kurt, to build on, let's say we had the same staff cutbacks, it sounds like, and we didn't get this, would we have an additional $50,000 savings in the overall budget, or do we have to do this to get that savings?
No, the 50,000 was the 50,000 you'd have and again, the golf budget we're talking about. So it would be the $50,000. So when Mike and I talked, part of the discussion was looking at this technology, besides the mowers that we just finished with, was, okay, well, if we're looking at this technology, let's re-examine the staffing and adjustments based upon what you think we could do this year to still give the same service. Mike came back with some changes in staffing and stuff as part of this. So in the end, if you didn't do this, there would still be $50,000 in savings for this. But in part, this was generated by a reevaluation of that to see what we could.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead, Dan.
No, my thought is if we're still going to save the 50,000, but not that I am anti-technology by any means at all. It's just this in our current situation. My preference would be to put that $50,000 towards the golf course debt that we're funding through the general fund, and we're pre-spending the $3 million. So to further reduce risk of how much money we're carrying out, to support the overall golf debt. So my preference would be to put that $50K towards the golf course debt, because if you've been reading the news, you've seen that the Del Cora deal was recommended by the administrative law judges to not go through, and that's the same. That's Aqua, that's BFM, that's Obermeyer is that team. So it's not for no matter what you think about the sewer deal, that's an increased risk if it's a similar deal, let's say, for lack of a better term, and the ALJs at the state level are recommending not to approve, then that increases our risk of having to carry that, address that additional that $3 million up front. So I see that as a risk. Nothing against golf, Mike, but it's just a risk to the overall budget and what we have in there to try and pare that down a little bit. That's my concern.
All I'll point out with Mike is again, I'm giving sort of the worst case scenario estimate. I believe that one of the things that was talked about briefly before you came on was Mike provided a very, very conservative estimate on a revenue generator, or what this would generate in revenue. And most of the examples he has would suggest that a percentage of the golfers would use this would actually kick back like $100,000. That's a terrible way to phrase this. Would generate back $100,000 to the township. And Mike was taking a much more conservative approach to basically say, we'll just estimate like 30 or 40% of that to really be safe. And that, quite frankly, my guess is that Mike would tell you that the expectation would be that it would do much, much better than that, but he'd rather not lead with that big number. If this came out the way that other courses, and there's a limited number of courses, are using this, I think we'd find in the end that it was a significant revenue generator for the cost.
So you said the two magic words there, Kurt: revenue generator. So if the worst case is the most likely case is a revenue generator, that changes the conversation in my mind that we should be promoting revenue generation wherever we can.
And what was presented, Dan, was Mike gave these are my words based on the multiple conversations we had, a really conservative number for the board to basically say, I think we can do much better than this. But even in something that it wouldn't go so well, as an example, we're still offsetting costs almost entirely. And if it goes moderately well to extremely well, it will be a positive net gain. And if it goes really well and we have a good golf year and great weather, it could be a significant cash gain. So I asked Mike to present this from a scenario of the ultimate safety to present. So he scaled that number to basically say, okay, we'll just put this number in, which isn't great, but it still offsets our 2021 costs that we'd need to institute it.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's helpful. And Mike, you wanted to?
I was just going to say, Dan, the numbers, the case studies that Top Tracer is giving us are, more like 30%, which would be over $100,000. And, so that's, again, that's kind of their safe number that they're giving us. But again, we're sensitive to the debt service. So we've been, trying to be conservative in those numbers as well. The other piece I would add, the Fairway IQ piece, is going to definitely generate additional labor savings on top of that $50,000, because we're looking at about $10,000 savings there. So I think right off the bat, we're looking at $60,000 versus a potential $50,000 savings. So.
And Dan, I didn't include that in any of the analysis because I wanted to take the situation that says it basically pays for itself. And if we see these other things, just the savings he mentioned, the number is close.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more discussion from the board? And Monica, is there any public comment?
Yes, we have Zach on the line.
Excellent. Can you bring Zach in?
Coming in.
Hey, Zach, can you state your full name and address? And then give
Zachary
your public
Rubin, 661 Covington Road. Number one, I'd like to apologize. I'm watching this on television, so my screen really doesn't see the PowerPoint clearly. My question is, how much is the top tracer, just alone, that item?
32,000.
Okay, 32,000. And is that one unit you buy, or is that for all the, how many stalls is that, or how does that work?
We have 20 stalls. So 17 would be mobile and 3 undercover. That would be
And
mine.
how much does it cost a golfer to, is it per hour? Is it per bucket? How does the, how's the cost?
There's a few ways to monetize it, both in the cost of the bucket, the daily use fee of the mobile, or the rental space of the undercover units. And then
When we say rentals, is it per hour? Is it per half hour? Is it per day?
So two ways, Zach. There is an option that would be kind of a membership style where you would charge an additional fee. We have over 4,000 people that take advantage of our driving range cards. So obviously if, a couple of % of those take advantage of it, we get to our number. So it's a membership add-on. It's a daily fee, usage fee. So it might be a $3 to $5 increase per use to have the technology turned on for you. And then things like parties and events, or just for some of golfers who want to rent the undercover and just hang out there and play Pebble Beach, where we would charge them an hourly rate.
Thank you. And my last question is the Fairway IQ. Can the GPS be used to find my balls when I hit them in the rough, so that if it can, then I will start using Pro V1 balls where I won't be losing them? So my question is, can it be modified to find my balls when they're in the deep fescue?
Well, it doesn't yet, but if I know this owner, he's going to figure out a way to do that for you. But yeah, no, it is not doing that. But yeah, I appreciate that. And, it's amazing how quick technology's going. So stay tuned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zach. Any other public comment, Monica?
No further public comment.
Okay. No more discussion. With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you, everybody. See you soon.
Have a good night.
You too.
All right. Well, a little bit of a slowdown there, but we're up to item number 8, the engineer's report.
Yes, hi, Supervisors. You have in your packet my engineer's report. I'm going to dive right into the agenda item, which is to consider escrow release number 1 for the Yardley Preserve development. That is the development that is across the street from Caddis and on the north side of Dobry Road. That work has begun. They have requested escrow release in the amount of $95,087.00. This is work to complete the demolition of the existing house that was on the property, installation of the rock construction entrance, installation of erosion and sediment control measures, and also some clearing of the trees that were to be removed. And so that work is completed. So we are recommending escrow release in the amount of $95,087.00.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, John, for seconding. Any discussion? Yes, Dan?
I'll ask my usual, excuse me, Andy, I'll ask my usual question. Are you satisfied that I know that this is only a small portion of the overall escrow that they have for this, but are you satisfied that they've completed the actions to date that they're supposed to?
I am satisfied that they've completed those actions. And since you brought it up, there is $2,200,000 and change still remaining in escrow.
Thanks, Andy.
Any other comments? Monica, is there any public comment?
No public comment.
Then all in favor of the motion, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, the motion passes 5-0. Andy, do you have more to say?
I was going to continue with an update on the 2021 road program.
Okay.
As you know, at the last meeting, we were given authorization to issue an addendum for 3 bid alternates. We did issue that addendum on the 29th of January. So in summary, that would be the addition of 3 bid alternates. Bid alternate number 1 is Silo Road from Harvest Drive to Coldpacker Road. Bid alternate number 2 is Inverness Drive. And then bid alternate number 3 would be James Court. So we included those in an addendum. We uploaded that to PennBid. We had a pre-bid meeting for the road program on the 28th, which was last Thursday. So going forward, the bid opening date is February 11th, next Thursday. And then subsequently, we would be looking to award February 17th. And that would be, that would require a waiver of the responsible contractor ordinance for public notification. That I believe that's section 99-8D, which we would be requesting. Because this is the road program, we've had the same 5 bidders, or relatively the same familiar bidders on this type of work. All of the bidders would be required, because this is a liquid fuels project, to be certified by PennDOT and on PennDOT's list. PennDOT has an online form which we check their credentials subsequent to bidding, and just in talking with my colleagues, when the bids come in, we check the bidders to make sure that that they haven't been debarred in any other locations where we do work. And so that would almost justify the fast return on the.
Andy, you're just to clarify, are you asking for the entire 21 days to be waived, or just to shorten it to a shorter period of time?
Just shortening it to a shorter period of time.
So do you have, is it 7 days, 14 days? What are you requesting?
So I believe we did this last year as well, but I see Kurt jumping up and down. So if we could have Kurt.
I just want to make sure so people don't think, I asked Andy to talk about this. And the reason I asked Andy to talk about this, and again, it's for the board's discretion. As you all are aware, we have begun much earlier asking the engineering company to put together specs for the road program. We actually start this late, and we started in November. The reason for that is to get this out on the street as soon as possible, with the goal of being the first project, or one of the first projects of the year. The concern that I have, speaking to a lot of other managers that try to move along as quickly as they can, but don't start it in the previous calendar year like we do, is with all due respect to that contractor's ordinance. And I realize like Andy said, we have companies that are familiar to us. There's the same companies we see, Morrissey, Bray, that these guys deal with. Is when there's a delay that way, it may not seem like much, But for other towns that are right on our heels with bid time, if they award to the same company that we end up doing, we actually can fall behind them in terms of when they get on the schedule. And I just want us to try to have a discussion about how we start early so we can be the first project and not get third or fourth or fifth in line, which really can push us back months. And it wouldn't seem that way. It's just everyone sort of rushing to do to catch up to us. And that's the only point I asked for Andy to bring this up.
Okay, I see that Dan wants to comment. So Dan, go ahead.
It's more of a question, and actually my question was going to be sort of kind of what you already brought up, in that I was curious as to who showed up. I don't know how the pre-bid meeting was held, but who showed up to the pre-bid relative to prior bidders from previous years? Was it the normal, usual suspects, or do we have any?
That's interesting. The pre-bid was held via Zoom this year for obvious reasons. We had 4 bidders show up, and I think that it was similar to the interested parties within the last couple of years. And even on PennBid, you can go in and check and see. Now under the new PennBid format, there is an opportunity for bidders to check that they are interested in bidding and they are interested as being the prime contractor on the project. And so the ones that have checked it in PennBid and also the ones that have attended, I think there was a sub that had attended the pre-bid meeting this year, the concrete sub. But for the most part, yeah, it's the same familiar parties.
It's good. And then I guess the other, sorry. And then the
Glasgow, Ray Brothers.
Okay, sorry. You faded out. I couldn't hear you. I thought you were done.
Go ahead, Dan. Finish.
Sorry. And then I guess the follow-up is, Kurt, to your point about getting at the head of the schedule a little bit. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, we talked about a little bit that I like most things. I like to be first in line to get it done. But I think there was some discussion about, from a practical standpoint, in terms of getting the best material at the right time of year and let them get the kinks out. If it was better to, how did my old professor say this? It was better to be on the bleeding edge a little bit versus the cutting edge. So being second or third in line, if that was better for us or not. That I still like to be first in line to guarantee that we get done on time. But I'm curious from a practical standpoint for this purpose with the specific material, if there's any opinion on that this year. I recall that conversation a few years ago.
It's been my experience that the material, maybe towards the end of the season, could be jeopardized, but that's only because there's a higher likelihood of it being placed in cold weather, or the conditions of placement are less than ideal. I think that just with the technology that a lot of the plants, the asphalt plants, have in place, I believe that the material still meets PennDOT standards. It's still a mixed design that is, signed off and approved through PennDOT standards. And so I don't see any reason to delay it based on the.
But we want the good stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, even if it. We want the good stuff that more than just checks the box. So I'm just curious. I have no real concerns about shortening it a little bit, and I don't know if that's something we need to consider tonight, or if we wait until our next agenda.
I asked Andy, frankly, to bring this up tonight.
Okay.
Understanding that if we're coming to you at the next meeting with a recommendation for award, I don't want to sit there and make it look like we're dropping that on you at that meeting. And I think the point was to initiate that discussion. And I think what Andy's going to tell you, Andy, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I just think, Dave, to answer your question, we're not suggesting that be waived or there not be given that opportunity, but that we could shorten that time frame.
That's why it's because the motion would have to be phrased or framed in such a way that it would be to approve the commencement of the reviewing the bids and awarding the bids with an agreement to shorten the public review time from 21 days in the ordinance down to 14 days or whatever the time frame you want to be pursuant to section 99-8 of the applicable ordinance.
That 14 days literally takes us to the next meeting in March. So Dan, I know we've talked about these sorts of questions all the time.
Yeah.
It would literally take us to then the following public meeting if someone felt inclined to let the board know, the public know of their concerns, and it would go to the next meeting. And then we could sit and do the background stuff. You know, I mean, again, for the public's knowledge, one of the things that Andy's held accountable for us is if there's some bidder that's blown up somewhere, the roads are terrible or something, they're the ones we really task with knowing what's happening. That's not to diminish the public's input, but if we could do it 2 weeks, I think it keeps us right at that March 3rd meeting, and then we can go.
So where we're landing right now is that when we'll open the bids, they'll be on the next agenda, and at that time, we'll make the award with a reduction in the time frame in which to
Public review process.
Right, so that we would shorten it to 14 days so that hopefully the bids will really be awarded the first week in March.
Right.
I think
Summary.
everyone's followed that.
Good summary.
Okay.
Yeah, and realistically, what would happen is after the first meeting, we would issue a notice of intent to award, which could be revoked if,
Yeah. And then I don't want to overcomplicate things, but I wonder if the board would want to put on our ever-growing list of things to think about, possibly making a permanent amendment to this type of contract only in terms of the responsible bidders. Not for everything, but for these types of, the road program, let's say.
Basically,
ahead.
recurrent contracts you're talking about, essentially.
So just to give the board a reminder, we did amend this a year or so ago, I think, Dan, when you were chair. And one of the discussions understandably, was from a resident who called in and said, well, you have several times a year, but there's 3 weeks between meetings, right? Remember that, Dan, where we talked, well, okay, there is 3 weeks, because originally that ordinance was contemplating 14 days. And the concern then is if the contract fell in that period of time, that those 3 weeks between public meetings, they could miss the time to call in, or, that's not to say they couldn't be told to call the manager or the engineer, what have you, with their concerns that could be presented. But that was the reason that the ordinance was changed to that 21 or kept at that 21 days. So I think we can talk about that. It's just how we're going to get around potentially that nuance when meetings fall.
But Suzanne, to your point, for contracts that are recurring, and recurring contracts are one thing, but the safety net there is pen bid, right? So there's other means to review these things quickly, efficiently, that check every box that we have in our ordinance, which, it's a good ordinance. So if there's a caveat, I think that's where we focus, are the ones, not to get into it now, but the ones that keep coming back, and we have back, additional ways to check things quicker.
Right. Like a built-in redundancy for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
and
Andy, I saw you waving.
yeah, there is another way around it. I mean, theoretically, we could, historically, we have had the bid openings on Thursdays because that provides the maximum amount of time for the bidders to review the bid material and get a bid in within the week. We don't like to have it on Fridays usually because maybe the estimator for that company is out on a long weekend or something like that. And so we typically have the bid openings on Thursdays. But if the meeting is on a Wednesday, if the Board of Supervisors meet on a Wednesday, we could move the bid meeting or the bid opening to a Wednesday.
More to consider. That's another good idea too. So, okay. Any other discussion under Andy's engineer report?
I have nothing further, but if the board has questions, I'm happy to answer.
Can I?
Yes.
And have you heard anything about the light installation at Caddis? The ones that were delivered, I guess, last week or whatever it was?
Yeah, so it took 2 weeks for the light shields to come up from Texas. They got them. They're on site. I think later part of last week they got them. They're looking to install them as soon as they can. Obviously, the snow slowed them down earlier this week.
Hey, I'm still waiting on some of my Christmas gifts to show up, so I get it. And I don't know if this is for you or not, Andy, but are you familiar? Kurt, this might actually be for you, but it's engineering related. When on Taylorsville and where intersection with Highland and Mapleville, which is basically my neighborhood, they've tied up some. This is Fred. I think you and I were joking about the used car lot flags at one point.
That are now gone.
They're actually still there. It looks like they just ripped some of them down, and they're still on all 4 trees or poles that are there.
We did that.
Yeah, so they're still hanging there. So I was curious. So that was us that we tried to take care of it for the Bridge Commission, or whoever.
Some of them, so they put those up because that's their measure for the height that things have to be. As I told you, for power.
They don't hit the power lines. Yeah.
I don't have an update as far as that status. I can certainly check with the Public Works Director and the Code Office that was part of that conversation.
Okay, and similar issue, I guess, on Mapleville. Have we heard anything back from the Bridge Commission on fixing the road that they beat up?
For Mapleville?
Yeah,
it would be part of what they'd indicated us. It would be part of their next paving program, which I would anticipate to be this year.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Okay. Monica, is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. Then moving along to agenda item number 9, project updates. Kurt?
Sure. You have sort of the updates. As a reminder, in my report, I had given you a Sandy Run timeline. And for the public that would be interested, first, the bids are on Penn Bid. They appeared on Monday. That will go through March 8th. The project timeline, and I won't get into all of the details. We've given ourselves, I believe, a generous amount of time, something like 112 days to have that project done, that we would anticipate besting, but we did that to be safe in the event there's bad weather, what have you. They outlined in my report, and forgive me, it's not right in front of me, but it would be essentially the days before school started. So we created a very vast time frame with keeping school start next fall in mind. We certainly believe we'll beat that time frame. We'll anticipate coming back to you soon with those results and hopefully a positive recommendation to move forward. The other update I would give you is that we've been having ongoing meetings with Pennsylvania Water in regards to our multi-use trail. We're finalizing the details of the easement for that trail that we need from them. We've had 2 very productive meetings, as I had mentioned to all of you, because PennDOT is paying for a majority of the project. The easement has to be per their spec, which is ambiguous at best. So we're going to be creating a separate memorandum of understanding that, from the township's perspective as well, outlines what our responsibilities are, what their responsibilities are, when they need to, that they have the right to dig up that portion of the trail if it's to get to infrastructure that they have, but then they would be responsible for fixing it. We would be maintaining it on a regular basis as far as maintenance. So all of those details will be done. I would anticipate, for the chair, I haven't talked about this with Suzanne, that we would have something in all likelihood for the first meeting in March to approve that. And that's sort of one of the final pieces that we need to put that entire package together to go off to PennDOT so that that trail can go out for bid, because they will be bidding it, the township will not. Other than that, I don't have anything on project updates unless there's a question.
Any questions? Any public comment?
There's no public comment on this.
Good. Moving along.
I have, before I get to the items on the agenda, I just want to point out 2 things. As I had said to all of you previously, and Monica, I believe, just got this out on social media. We're very happy to announce that Lower Makefield Township was awarded the 2020 Delaware Valley Insurance Trust Risk Management Innovation Award for our Public Works contract. As a reminder to people, we created a process by which employees who obtained additional trainings and certifications could change their job classification level, making more money, but providing more efficient, more diverse employees. And I would use as an example our LEAF program. Our LEAF program in the past has had one person that had capabilities in dealing with some of the pieces of equipment that if he was off, if there was a problem, we slowed down immensely. As we've incentivized this, we now have 4 employees that can handle all of these pieces of equipment. We also give a means by which when we hire people to not be stuck in the same job classification forever. Divot recognized that not only helps in the ways we think about, but those trainings and those certifications improve our standing with them in terms of workers' compensation, in terms of risk. And we've been asked as a town, so we'll get a plaque and $1,000 towards our training efforts. They'll cater a lunch for all of the employees. But I do want to make a point that in the end, that was part of a contract negotiation. So, I like to say in the end, it was visioning, but if in the end, I didn't have a union that was willing to have those discussions with me, it would have just been hallucinating. So for us, I think it's a feather in our cap. It's the first such contract that I've seen in Pennsylvania. The workers are very pleased with it. I think our residents will get much better service, and we were recognized for it. So I wanted to take the time to say that, because that's as much about those guys as it is about management and even all of you that approved it and were open-minded to it. So I thank you for that. So because I also, if you'll indulge me for a second to the chair, because I like to talk about when we have good stories to report, I do want to talk about the snowstorm and a positive tidbit that I want to add. We do evaluate how we perform in storms. I have reviews that take place. So I think for the most part, what we saw was an unusual event where that precipitation was ongoing for upwards of 60 hours. There are areas that we will evaluate. We had all 36 pieces of equipment on the road. We had pieces that broke down at particular times that delayed us in certain areas that proved to be problematic. We had a blade that, for example, that broke on one of our trucks, actually on Princess Drive, where it wasn't getting all the way down to the asphalt. It was leaving about this much left that looks like we sort of did it, but we really didn't. So we had to go back and take multiple trucks back over. So we'll continue to evaluate those things. But the one thing I do want to point out is we have one of our employees, Chris Powanski, who got a very nice mention from a resident on Lower Makefield as a great place to live, Lynn Moser. Lynn reports, and I'm going to pull this and I'll try to be as quick as I can. Lynn reports that her 10-year-old son decided to go ice skating on their wood floor and got a 2.5-inch splinter in his foot. And when she went out to her car, it was in the midst of the storm. She was having trouble getting off of the side of the road. We happened to have Chris, who was driving by, who she motioned to that she was in some distress. Chris plowed around her car. Chris got out of his vehicle with his shovel and dug her out and got her out so she could get to take her son to the ER. So I'm going to keep saying this. All of these people we have are public servants who are well-intentioned, who were all prone to mistakes or criticisms, or it's easy to look back and say we should have done things a different way. But, this is the guys we have. These were the guys that we had that worked 60 hours straight, that slept 4 hours in a cot in the meeting room in the township building before they'd go back. So I certainly appreciate their efforts, the efforts of Greg Hucklebridge, the public works director that was fielding complaints, checking them out where we did have mistakes that we had made that we tried to rectify as quickly as possible. We'll continue to learn to I will give a thanks to the board that over the last couple of years, the pieces of equipment that we have purchased that have upgraded the plowing equipment have made the job of the guys easier, and we'll continue to focus on swapping out those older trucks and plows and things that are problematic as we go forward. So thank you for that, to the chair to let me do that. But I wanted Chris to get an acknowledgement that I think he deserved. Thank you. To the agenda items, excuse me. The first item that I have for you to consider, I include in your packet, and I also asked for Mr. Vito from Fred Ebert's office to give an update on all of our capital projects. As a payment request number 1, for Lower Makefield contract SWR 20-1, our lining project in the amount of $21,504.50. Excuse me. Let me to be paid to, excuse me, Standard Pipe Services, LLC.
Would you like a motion on that, Kurt?
So moved.
Thank you, James.
One second.
Thank you, Fred. Andy, did you want to make a motion?
No, but I'm sorry. I thought I heard Kurt say 21,000 and the agenda says 211,000.
I'm sorry. Thank you. If that's what I said.
Kurt, your
The motion is for $211,504.50. Thank you, Andy. My apologies.
I'll adjust my motion accordingly.
Thank you,
I'll
Jim.
agree to the adjustment.
Thank you, Fred. Is there any discussion? Yes, Dan.
Yeah. So in reading the memo, Kurt or Andy, whoever, it looks like there was an issue that part of it was fixed. There's still some to fix, but the motion to release the 211,000+ is to cover all those items that have been successfully completed. So there will still be I'm estimating here, but there's an outstanding amount of like $55,300 or so, which will hold until they're finished fixing the other bulge, if I read that correctly.
Correct.
Okay.
The outstanding amount is $55,312.50.
Number sounds familiar.
Yeah. So when do we think they'll have that done by? And if it's in the memo, I apologize.
I'll be honest with you, off the top of my head, I can't give you that answer, Dan, but I want to say soon. And that's, I know, perfectly vague, but by soon, I would imagine that we should be wrapped up in the next 6 or 8 weeks, I would think.
Okay.
Probably earlier, because I think the goal has been, late February to early March, and I still think we're on that.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other discussion from board members? Seeing none. Monica, any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Then with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0.
The next item I have for your consideration, the motion to approve slide repairs by Safe Slide in the amount of $19,600. As a reminder to all of you, this is the company that we engaged when we redid the slides now 2 years ago. If you recall, when they sanded it down, remember that was still sitting there wet, and we had to repaint and do various repairs. These repairs were originally contemplated for last year, but we delayed them. This is the company that specializes in this. We've received this quote. We have budgeted for this amount. So there is enough money to cover it. Monica is here if there's specific questions on the work, but I'd ask for consideration.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Oh, I'll second.
Thank you, James, for making the motion and Dan for seconding it. With that, I'll open it up to discussion. Any discussion, Fred?
Just to be funny, sure we can't save money by using that auto body shop?
Thank you, Fred. We'll put you on mute. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, with that, we'll open it to public comment. Monica, is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Okay, then with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Second item, or next item, excuse me, is consideration to run the advertisement for the Park and Rec needs assessment and master plan. Again, we have Monica here. This has been discussed at the Park and Rec Board. We have budgeted for this in the Park and Rec Fund. So we have a benchmark as far as what we have. This is not to award anything. It's just to run the advertisement to seek those proposals.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Fred. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, James. Discussion? Thank you.
I just do want to point out in the end, I mean, the goal of the plan is to sort of identify needs in the township. Monica, you can correct me if I'm wrong, just with what they would see in terms of types of fields, courts, what have you. Not necessarily. Monica, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, so not necessarily commenting on specific projects or anything like that, but it's more of, correct me if I'm wrong, Monica, an inventory and an analysis and recommendations based upon understood standards in Park and Rec as far as what types of things we might want to look at going forward.
Yeah, that is correct. Just to be clear, we did do a field analysis, and this is expanding on that. So we really want to hear what the community has to say. It's really gauging their satisfaction, their engagement, their variety engagement, and recommendations. And in addition to looking at the overall big picture of Parks and Recreation and, what we should be offering and providing as a township of our size. So, I'm glad to discuss anything with anybody who has any questions.
I think I already said Dan, Fred, so could you hold a second? Dan, did you want to say anything?
Come back to me. I lost my train of thought. Thank you.
Fred, then, thank you.
Oh, Monica, I just think that if we do this study, as we will do this study, I'm sure that the professionals who are going to do the needs assessment will factor in the loss of Williamson Park in the borough in Morrisville.
Yeah, we can make sure to include that in the study. Mm-hmm.
Anything coming to mind, Dan?
Yeah, well, I think, Kurt, you might have already said it, but this is just to advertise, right? This isn't to award anything. Okay.
Right.
I'll say, I'm a big advocate for planning studies, as probably know that already. It's just right now I have a big concern about with the risk with the pool and the golf course and everything that I mentioned. And when we were talking about golf with the sewer deal, I have a concern about spending several, tens of thousands of dollars on a planning study this year. My preference would be to put it off until next year when we're certain about certain things and then push forward full tilt accordingly. But I'll be curious to see what we get for bids. So hopefully they can be a little more cost effective than $30,000 for a planning study. That would be my hope.
Any other comment, John?
And we'll be inviting the Bucks County Planning Commission as a potential bidder in this?
Yes.
Okay.
Anyone else? Thank you. Monica, is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Okay. So with that, I call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Kurt. And Kurt, you were talking, and I didn't want to interrupt, but I thank you for sharing that story about our staff and really, snow happens. You might think we would have it perfect by now, but each storm is unique and our resources are limited. Overall, I think the town did a great job, and I appreciate all the effort of our staff. And really, I kept joking with my coworkers. It started snowing at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, and it was still snowing, 10 o'clock today. So thank you for everybody's help and work on this. With that, Dave, it's your turn. We're at the solicitor.
Thank you. I'm trying to make this as brief as possible, given the items we're talking about. First, there was an executive session tonight that started at 6:15. Those in attendance included Supervisors Blundy, Weiss, Lewis, and McCartney, as well as Mr. Ferguson and myself. Informational items and items related to litigation and real estate were discussed. The executive session concluded at 7 p.m. when the three interviews for the 9/11 committee commenced, which ended about 7:30 when this meeting started. Under my report, the first thing is to consider approving an advertisement. This is, again, an advertisement for an amendment to the police pension ordinance. The reason for this is the ordinance should conform to what the latest police contract terms are. And this specifically relates to a reduction in the age of eligibility for retirement, reducing it from 55 to 53, and also specifying the amount of contribution levels in the contract for the police officers to contribute toward their pension plan. And that's set forth in the proposed ordinance amendment. And we would just ask for the board's consideration and approval to advertise the amendment as presented.
With that, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Fred. Any discussion from the board? Hearing none. Any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Okay. Well, with that said, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye, raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0.
Great, thank you. The next item, you may recall that I believe was the first meeting in December, could be wrong, could have been the second. The board approved the lease addendum for the Farringer House, which for reference for everybody is the township-owned property in the giant parking lot that is on Stony Hill Road. It's been leased for years by an Ameriprise entity, and we had approved a 3-year lease after it was presented to, and Kurt, jump in if I'm saying anything incorrect here. After the lease was presented to the tenants, they indicated that for a variety of reasons, they prefer to have a 1-year lease with 1-year options. Again, the same amount of money would be charged to them for the lease if indeed they accepted the options that were presented. And what we have done is reconstructed the lease with the options set forth over a total 3-year period. Same amount of rent will be charged, like I said, in those interims, and then with I think it's important here, a 60-day notice provision, so that if in some reason there is a decline of the option, a decline to exercise the option, that then the township will have hopefully ample time to find a tenant in time, so that there would be little, if any, interim between lease terms. But hopefully that will not become an issue. But that is what's before the board tonight.
Is there a motion? Someone want to make a motion to?
So moved.
Thank you, Fred. Second? Thank you, Dan. Sorry, John, I saw Dan. Any discussion among the supervisors?
Dave, real quick, what was the lead time coming out of the lease in case they didn't renew?
60 days.
60 days.
And has anybody ever expressed any other interest to lease that space besides that?
Kurt could answer that better than I have. In the time that I'm familiar with it, I have not heard of any other interest in that. But, it's been there since 2008. So we're talking, 12 and a half years now at this point. So.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments by supervisors? Monica, is there any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Okay, with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you again. Next on the zoning hearing board, there are 5 items, and just to break the suspense, we're going to recommend deferral on all these, but I will read them individually. And it'll be it's a familiar topic, as we've seen through the last several months with the pandemic. A lot of people are opting for installing pools for a variety of reasons, which are certainly understandable in the circumstances. First, K&S Pools and Patios is requesting a variance from Michael Hulsa for property located at 1573 Clark Drive in order to permit construction of an in-ground pool and paver pool decking resulting in greater than permitted impervious surface. Again, this is very familiar to all of us. There are no unusual circumstances presented by this compared to any of the other ones that have been presented to the township in the recent past. So we would recommend deferral unless there is a contrary sentiment by the board. Hearing none, excuse me, this next one. Anthony Anika and Amy Lamoureux are requesting a variance for property located at 349 Sherwood Drive in order to permit a pool, patio, and storage shed and fire pit area resulting in greater than permitted impervious surface. Again, a very similar and a common request. So unless there's a contrary sentiment, we recommend deferral. Hearing no contrary sentiment, the next one, Lori Katz and Phil Sutton are requesting a variance for property located at 315 Sally Road in order to permit construction of an in-ground pool, patio, and equipment pad resulting in greater than permitted impervious surface. The only difference in this one is that this is in an area where there is some flood zone identification. This, however, this particular property, apparently according to the remapping and what Mr. Majewski provided to us the other day, indicates that the flood zone here is not in the area that's usually considered by the board to participate, as there's a more, I guess there's another flood zone nearby that where the
is it the 500 year versus
the
the 100
500
year
year versus 100 year? Thank you.
Or the 0.2 versus 0.1, as they say these days.
So that's it's just the 500 year flood zone. It's not been identified as something which is normally a concern. So unless there's a contrary sentiment, we once again recommend deferral. Hearing none. Next, Ross and Karen Birnbaum are requesting a variance for property located at 1381 Revere Road in order to permit construction of an in-ground pool with decking and equipment pads resulting in greater than permitted impervious surface. Again, we recommend deferral unless there's a contrary sentiment. Hearing none. The last one, Mike and Melissa Schaefer are requesting a variance for a property located at 754 Adams Circle in order to permit construction of an in-ground pool, patio, and equipment pad resulting in greater than permitted impervious surface. And like the refrain says, unless there's a contrary sentiment, we recommend deferral. Hearing none, that's all we have for that particular item. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dan.
Quick, the general question, because we've, as you said at the onset, Dave, this is familiar refrain here. Is this something it's strictly driven by percent impervious, right? Based on the zoning and when everything was built.
If there's a setback issue or something like that, we would see that listed in the applications and would be in the agenda item as well. So far, I mean, occasionally we have ones with other requests for relief, but in these are almost in every case impervious surface. So, okay. And what I see, and I think what's helpful for all of us is that most of the applicants, whether because the contractors recommend it or they themselves recognize it, that they almost always now include some type of mitigation effort as part of the application, whether it's a trench or something else like that would be offsetting the increase. And sometimes they actually reduce the impervious surface because they're already higher than that as they exist prior to the application of this situation. So we're seeing in many cases, I would say even a majority, conscious effort by many of the homeowners in these applications to provide an offsetting mitigation plan, which I think is to their credit, and I think shows a conscious effort on everybody's part that they recognize that it's an important issue for everybody. It doesn't affect just their property, but everybody. So
good to know. Thanks.
Yep.
Great.
That's all for that. Next, we have hopefully in the queue officials from Pennsylvania American Water Company for requesting land development approval for the booster pump station area. This is actually a request for preliminary and final land development approval. So
They're in now.
Craig, your camera is coming up
sideways.
Yeah. So I don't know, Craig, if there's anything you can do about that. Thank you. Easy fix. You're on mute, but that's okay. You're right.
Okay.
My name's Craig Dash. I'm with Pennsylvania American Water. As you know, we're here for the preliminary final land development plan for our Oxford Valley booster pump station. With me tonight is Jason Leonard from HRG. He's the engineering consultant that we hired. I will turn it over to him to present.
Yeah, so just a general overview of the project. This includes the removal of the existing subsurface booster pump station and the replacement with a new above ground station. The project is look at the existing site along North Oxford Valley Road. Also, as part of this project, the existing driveway that currently cuts into township property is going to be realigned. So it is on PA American Water property. We worked with the Planning Commission to reduce the width of the driveway to the greatest extent possible to reduce impacts to trees, reduce stormwater management facilities. And stormwater management is being handled with a proposed infiltration basin on the site. And if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Could you?
If not, I do have a proposed.
Dave, I would like to talk.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You mentioned that you work with the Planning Commission to try to reduce the amount of pavement, et cetera. But I'd like if you could please talk about that, because I know there was some talk along the way about trying to, do whatever we could to make sure that there was less. I'll just keep saying paving. I'm not fluent in this. And there was some pushback at planning that maybe there were opportunities to narrow the path along the way. And Andy, I think you even spoke about that in your comment letter. So is this really the best we could do?
Do you want me to answer that or Andy? I wasn't sure.
No, yeah, that's for you because.
So originally we had consistent with driveway 20 feet. That was to accommodate turning movements for truck access to the site. After talking with the Planning Commission, it sounded like they were open to a more variable width driveway. So sort of on the straighter shot portion of the driveway, we were able to neck that down in order to reduce that gravel impact and the impact to some trees that kind of go along the driveway there. So that was kind of the evolution of it. Still works with our turning movements, but we narrowed it down where we could, and that was kind of the back and forth that we had.
And just to give you a scale, I think it narrows down to 12 feet wide for a majority of that driveway. So,
just to clarify, Andy, the last revised plan was dated January 29th. Would that include that revision?
That does.
Okay, thanks.
So I actually went out of order, and I apologize for that. Is there a motion?
Do you want to have a motion? Want me to read the letter as to make the motion? Would that be appropriate? I know this is the most exciting part of the meeting for everybody when we read an draft approval letter. So let me see what I can do here. This be addressed to Mr. Leonard. It's regarding Township of Lower Makefield, Pennsylvania American Water, tax map parcel number 20-034-048, preliminary and final land development plan review. This is with respect to plans submitted by HR&G dated September 2020, last revised January 29, 2021, consisting of 12 sheets along with post-construction stormwater management report dated September 11, 2020, last revised January 15, 2021, also prepared by HR&G, which will be we'll see if it's approved by the Board of Supervisors tonight, subject to the following conditions. Number one, the applicant shall comply with the Lower Makefield Township subdivision and land development ordinance, the Lower Makefield Township zoning ordinance, and all applicable state and federal ordinances, statutes, and/or laws. Two, where applicable, receipt of all permits, authorizations, and/or approvals from all agencies with jurisdiction, including but not limited to PADEP and the Bucks County Conservation District. Next, compliance with the Remington DeBurnick Engineers February 3, 2021 review letter and any supplements to same. Next, compliance with the Lower Makefield Township Planning Commission recommendations from its November 9th, 2020 meeting and any supplements to same. Next, compliance with the Bucks County Planning Commission January 6, 2021 review memorandum and any supplements to same. Next, the compliance with the October 6, 2020 Safe Engineering, Highway Engineering LLC review letter and any supplements to said letter. Next, compliance with the October 2nd, 2020 Yardley Makefield Fire Company review letter authored by Timothy J. Chamberlain, Deputy Fire Chief, and any supplements to same. Next, compliance with the October 9th, 2020 review letter from the Lower Makefield Township Environmental Advisory Council, and any supplements to same. Land development waivers, there's one sought on behalf of the applicant to obtain preliminary and final land development approval at the same time pursuant to the Saldo sections 178-12B and 178-12D respectively. Next, compliance with the zoning hearing board decision of November 2, 2020, granting special exceptions and variances as indicated therein. Number one, a special exception for use of a property as a public utility or water treatment facility. And next, a variance from an otherwise required type 2 buffer yard is required by the zoning ordinance, both of which are subject to the following conditions. The existing driveway to be realigned and that Pennsylvania American Water file the necessary documents to reflect that the current title owner of the property is Pennsylvania American Water as successor in interest to Yardley Water and Power Company. Next, where applicable, applicants shall comply with all appropriate authorities responsible for approval of proposed utilities. And next and final, the applicant shall pay all required and appropriate fees associated with the project. The aforementioned conditions are those accepted by you, Mr. Leonard and Mr. Darish?
Yes.
Yes. As such, that would be the motion if it's acceptable to the board to make that motion in that form.
Do I hear a motion? Thank you, Fred. Second.
Can I just hear it again before I second? I second.
Thank you, James. Any discussion from the board? Go ahead, Dan.
Just curious, did you, I'm looking at the existing conditions plan. If I'm too zoomed in to tell you the sheet number, but it's probably about sheet 4-ish. Did you, trying to think of the lay of the land here, did you see, are there any waters of the U.S. or waters of the Commonwealth / wetlands in proximity to the site at all?
There are not, no.
Okay. And then the building, I saw the building plans. One of the other building I think you all did across town. I know Supervisor Blundy had some. We've both been watching it go up, and it's kind of a barn looking feel. I'm curious as to how visible this building will be from the road, and if you've given any. The drawings are black and white, so I'm not sure what the treatments would be and how visible they would be. Could you speak to that a little bit?
There's a decent amount of vegetation, existing vegetation from North Oxford Valley Road to the site. To the degree of visibility, I can't really say. Maybe if you're looking straight up the driveway, you may be able. It looks like it would not be able to be seen from North Oxford Valley Drive, just based on the tree line that we have in our current survey. And we're also replacing a certain number of trees per the ordinance. And that's actually going on the area where the existing driveway is that cuts into township property. So that would further buffer the pump station from the road.
Okay. And since you mentioned, I don't know if, sorry, there's a little feedback there. Since you mentioned trees, are you able to fully comply with our tree ordinance? That's always a question with these things, that we're able to replace all the trees that are needed.
Yes. Yeah. We provided all the required number of trees. I think it was 19 total.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Monica, is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Okay.
If there was one thing we could...
Dan would like to say something else first, Jason.
No, well, I'm just reiterating something that where's Dave in the box here? Because not that I have ever worked or done any work for PA Water in the past, nor do I plan to in the future, because my company is probably has been number one in water engineering for the last 20 years, then I will be recusing myself, since there may be some potential in the future to
And I appreciate you bringing that to everybody's
conflict.
attention. I don't think under the circumstances it's required, but that's something certainly you can do.
Just being safe. That's all. But thanks.
Understand.
Jason, you were going to say something?
Yeah, sorry about that. The one thing that just came up recently that we just wanted to bring to your attention. There were some discussions about potentially changing that the entranceway we currently show as a paved entranceway. We were considering changing that to gravel, so the entire driveway would be gravel. It shouldn't make a difference from a stormwater perspective because it's still considered impervious per the ordinance, but it's something we wanted to just be transparent about and make sure it was acceptable to the township.
Andy?
Yes, I mean, I would find it acceptable. I think that it would be preferable because even though it's compacted gravel, it would theoretically have some additional infiltration over asphalt. So it would be a more conservative approach to stormwater management.
Thank you, Andy. Go ahead, Dan.
So for stormwater, absolutely, right? That's, we have to consider it impervious because that's the rule. But in practice, when you run the analyses, you get infiltration. That's the whole point. I guess my one concern with doing that is that it does, right? Again, correct me here. It does cross the multi-use trail, which is paved. We do have PA Water has run some events here in the past, attended by the public, those were great when they did that. I would anticipate some more of that. And then there's always that interface between gravel and pavement that can be a little iffy when trucks or whatever are going from one surface to the other, carrying gravel onto the road or spinning, trying to get into traffic and spinning out a little bit if you've ever experienced that. So stormwater perspective, absolutely. I have a few concerns about the apron as at the interface between the road and the gravel and the multi-use trail, because we don't want gravel. It's a multi-use trail, so people are biking, and we don't want gravel going onto the trail when people are biking. They can fall because it creates a sort of a soft shoulder feel to it. So those are I get the stormwater concern, but that's what I'd be concerned about.
No, those are reasonable concerns, and I would have them too. But on the plan, they show the multi-use trail being asphalt paved, and then the area between Oxford Valley Road and the multi-use trail being also asphalt. And then they show a depressed curb on the driveway side of the multi-use trail. So there would be something to catch any gravel that could become loose. There's the depressed curb there, and then the apron, so to speak, would be asphalt.
And that's all very helpful. I would just ask if we do go this way that Mr. Darosh, I apologize if I mispronounced your name, but if you can somehow have your local operations staff just keep a keen eye on that path to make sure that it's essentially swept and cleaned up as much as possible for safety purposes. That would be appreciated.
Okay. Would I'm just thinking out loud here, would if the bike path, I don't know what the width of that is, if that's say 10 feet, would maybe just a 20-foot width there or something so that it's not, that the gravel would have a chance to be not on the bike path itself, and then we would still have the depressed curve on each side, something. I mean, we'll do whatever. We were just trying to eliminate that length of pavement between Oxford Valley and the bike path. So whatever the township would like to see there, we can do.
Sorry, Suzanne. The plan I'm looking at, it looks, and I'm so zoomed in that I can't see the legend at this point, but there's two different hatchings, right? There's between the bike path and in Oxford Valley. The plan, it has the cross hatching with the dash line in between the solid lines. What is that surface? What are you planning for that surface? just to make sure we're all on the same page. Is that pavement or gravel?
It's currently shown as pavement, but I think the intent is to make that gravel.
That's what I thought I was hearing. And then on the other side of the path, on the station, I'll call it the station side of the path. That's a different hatch. It almost looks like the big stone almost. The way the hatching looks. What's the intended?
That would be the gravel. That would be the.
That's pure. That's gravel. Okay. That's shown as gravel, and that's what you want to put as gravel.
Mm-hmm.
I think personal preference, obviously this is a board decision, would be to see pavement from Oxford Valley to the multi-use trail, for safety purposes. And then I'll call it the curb catch on the other side that you have. I think that'll do the trick. But some buffer on either side, I think is the key for both the trail and the road. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks.
That would be my recommendation as well, Dan.
Okay.
Then we'll keep you with what Jason said.
I thought I heard Craig asking for. I thought, Jason, you were saying that you were showing it now as pavement, but you were asking if you could switch it to gravel.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. So
all the plans live as they are. That reduction that we thought we were going to have in pavement has been erased.
I'm sorry. Could you say that again?
We're back to the plans as they are presented
as they currently are,
and the attempt to minimize to whatever extent additional pavement by replacing it with gravel is gone. We're back to pavement.
Okay.
Everybody understand? Everybody in agreement? Okay. No more comment here. Any public comment, Monica?
There is no public comment.
All right. Well, with that, then we'll call the question. Dave, you'll read the motion one more time. Sorry.
Sure, no problem.
All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising their hand. Aye.
Aye.
I was waiting for Dave to read the motion again. I'll slide this time.
The motion passes 4-0 with one recusal.
Yeah, Rick, thank you for saying that.
And mercifully, that's all I have.
Great. Okay, then we are on to agenda item number 14, public comment. Monica, can you bring in the first public comment?
There is no public comment.
Oh, okay. Well, moving right along to discussion items. Are there any discussion items? Hearing none, we're moving right along to supervisor reports. Since I am a fan of the theme, I have no report. James, do you have any report to give?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Fred?
Unfortunately, I do have a slight report. The zoning hearing board met twice in the last, since we met 2 weeks ago. On January the 26th, they held a special meeting to determine standing on appellants for the zoning overlay ordinance. And the zoning hearing board ruled unanimously that the appellants had no standing, hence the appeal was dismissed. I have nothing further to report.
Thank you for that. John?
I have no report at this time.
Thank you. Dan?
I have a brief one. Actually, Fred and I have similar reports, I think. The Planning Commission met the day before the zoning hearing board to hear the Prickett Preserve land development plans. They voted to recommend approval of the plan. I believe that's preliminary final, with a couple of waivers were recommended in terms. A couple of them were the height of the lights. We're going from 20 to 25 feet, but that would be a reduction in the number of lights. So it would be in an attempt, I guess, to have a more efficient spread of the light. They did recommend approval of two conditional uses. One was for a bank, and one was for a pharmacy, as you might expect. And then, however, they did not recommend approval of the waiver with respect to our tree ordinance. I may have missed a couple items, but it was fairly efficient meeting. Everyone was heard. You'll whenever it comes before us, you'll see a few changes, I think, on certain items that, based on the visual we saw when we were doing the overlay. Obviously, engineering, once they dig into it, things always change a little bit. So you'll visually see a few things that are different. But they seem to be ready and willing to come before us in pretty short order. So I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that. But that's the Planning Commission report.
Well, and this follow up on the theme of, the theme, Fred, that Cricket Preserve, we will be asking the developers to come in, hopefully at the next meeting, just to give an overall update so that people can understand where we are and the status of the project. So,
yeah. And to your point, Suzanne, that's not a, and I think I'm aware of this, but that's not, to be even more specific about it, it's not a vote for the board. It's more of just to get a general update and background as to where they're at in terms of the overall process. But it's no presentation for us to vote on any type of approval, right?
Yeah, no, it's definitely not a voting. It's meant to be consistent with how we started back in 2019 to try to give as much information at appropriate points along the way. So
good idea.
Makes sense. Okay. All right, moving on to item 17, other business. John?
Yes, I move to provide a 60-day notice of termination to Keystone Municipal Services, LLC.
Do I have a second? Thank you, James. Any discussion?
And that's for building inspection services?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Any public comment?
There is no public comment.
All right. Well, with that then, call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Are there any appointments to boards, commissions, or special ad hoc committees? Go ahead, John. I didn't know if you wanted to say anything.
Yeah, if I could, if it'd be okay with the board, if we could take them all at once, if that would be okay with folks. I move that we appoint Danielle Frost to the 9/11 Anniversary Committee, as well as Ellen Saracini to the 9/11 Anniversary Committee, as well as Judy Reese. So if it's okay, we do all three at once, or I can do each one.
I think all three makes sense.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Fred. Any discussion? Any public comment?
There's no public comment.
And with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of those appointments, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 I'm not voting no. I'm just going to abstain since I wasn't here for the interviews. That's all.
Okay, so motion carries 4-0 with one abstention. Thank you very much. Okay, well, with there being no other business before the board tonight, this meeting is adjourned. I look forward to seeing you all in the beginning of March. Oh, look at me, next February, 2 weeks. Good night, everyone.
Good night.